Surprising fact. The world knows BTS because Jungkook did it secretly at some point in global music history. BTS's name no longer resonated only in South Korea or Asia. It becomes a symbol, a phenomenon, even a universal language. But behind the explosion in popularity, there is one surprising fact that is rarely discussed openly. The world came to know BTS not only because of its grand strategy, massive promotion, or the strength of the Korean entertainment industry. There is one figure who works in silence, without declarations, without claims, without exaggerated highlights. That figure is Jungkook. Jungkook never stood in front and said he was the key. He never demanded confession. But it was precisely in that silence that the world slowly turned towards BTS. While many people think BTS's fame was built through a viral moment or a planned global campaign, the reality is much quieter and more human. Jungkook did it in a way that almost no one noticed, not even himself. At the beginning of BTS's journey, when the global market was not yet fully open to Korean music, Jungkook was an invisible bridge. Not because he was most vocal about global ambitions, but because he became an emotional entry point for international listeners. Many fans outside of Korea admitted that they didn't immediately fall in love with BTS as a group. They first stopped because of one voice, one expression, one energy on the stage. It was Jungkook. With no press conference, no official statement, Jungkook introduced BTS to the world through consistency. She sings a song with a pronunciation that she keeps improving, even when the camera isn't looking at it. He rehearsed without saying much, perfecting his vocals, dance, and stage stamina as if he knew that one day, the world would be watching. And that day really came. The surprising fact is this: Jungkook was never specially prepared as the global face of BTS. He was just being himself, a young man who felt responsible for his group. But it is precisely that attitude that makes it so easily accepted by any culture. The world sees honesty, not concepts. The world hears sincerity, not just technique. In the United States, Europe, and Latin America, the initial reaction to BTS often starts with a simple comment. Who is the singer? Why does his expression feel different? Why does his appearance feel so sincere? The questions kept repeating themselves, and almost always came down to one name: Jungkook. Not because he speaks the most, but because he is most easily perceived. What Jungkook does secretly is to keep the standard. When the world is not watching, it acts as if the world is watching. He never considered a small appearance as a trifle. There was no stage that he treated half-heartedly. This is what the public rarely realizes. A global reputation is not built when the spotlight comes, but long before that, when there is no one. In old interviews, BTS members often referred to Jungkook as someone who learns by observing. It doesn't say much about the process, but it absorbs everything. A more universal way of singing, a stage expression that can penetrate language, to a consistent professional attitude. All that he did was not to be the center of attention, but to make BTS appear perfect as a whole. When BTS began to break into the global market, many people were surprised by their readiness. But behind that readiness, Jungkook has long formed a solid foundation. He learns foreign languages in his own way. He listened to global music without announcing it. It adapts style without losing identity. It was all done in silence, as if he was preparing for something he hadn't even fully imagined. The world has finally come to know BTS as a whole, solid, and authentic group. But often, the first door that opens is through Jungkook. Not because he was asked to be a door, but because his energy and sincerity could not be ignored. He became a face that felt safe to new listeners, a voice that felt familiar despite coming from a different culture. What is most surprising is the fact that Jungkook himself never claimed this role. He still stands in line with the other members, still citing BTS as the main reason for everything. But the world reads differently. The world saw that there was someone within that group who naturally became a magnet, without the need for strategy or cold calculation. Now that BTS has become a global name, many analysts are trying to break down their success into data and theories. But there is one element that cannot be measured by numbers. That element was Jungkook's consistent, quiet, and sincere presence from the start. He did not change himself for the sake of the world. He just makes sure that whatever he does it wholeheartedly. Perhaps this is the reason why the world not only knows BTS, but also feels close to them. Because behind the grandeur of the stage and the global spotlight, there is one story about a person who works without a voice, without demands, without drama. Jungkook didn't open the doors of the world to BTS with a shout. He did it with perseverance. And when the world finally came in, they just realized one surprising thing. BTS is known to the world not by chance. They are known for the fact that there is a person who from the very beginning prefers not to be half-hearted, even when no one is looking. The continuation of this story is actually the part that is rarely highlighted, because at this point Jungkook's role is increasingly felt but increasingly quiet. When BTS's popularity began to climb sharply and their name began to be called in the Western media, the pressure that came was no longer simple. The world is not just watching, the world is beginning to judge. And in the midst of that assessment, Jungkook again chose the same way. Silence, work, and carry the burden without saying much. There are moments when the global spotlight actually makes many artists waver. Identity is questioned, direction is changed, even mental fatigue becomes a great price. But Jungkook seems even more immersed in the process. It does not dissolve in euphoria. It does not make praise the ultimate goal. All he does is make sure that every time BTS takes to the international stage, they perform with a quality that no one can break. Many music watchers realize one thing is consistent. In every BTS performance abroad, there is one figure who always seems the most prepared to face a new audience. Not because he wanted to stand out, but because he seemed to understand that unwritten responsibility. Jungkook knows that for many foreign audiences, this is their first meeting with BTS, and the first impression should not be half-baked. Without realizing it, Jungkook becomes the emotional standard. It not only sings, but conveys taste. It's not just dancing, but communicating. Language may be different, but expressions never lie. The world that was initially skeptical of K-pop began to melt not because of the big concept, but because they saw someone who performed with raw honesty on stage. Even more surprising, Jungkook never used his position to build a personal narrative separate from BTS. He does not create a distance between himself and the group. Every success he always pulls back to the name of BTS. It is this attitude that indirectly strengthens the image of the group in the eyes of the world. BTS is not seen as a collection of competing individuals, but rather as one body moving with one breath. Behind the scenes, the story about Jungkook further clarifies his role. He is known as the toughest member on himself. He repeated the exercise when the others were finished. It corrects small details that the camera will not even notice. All this is not for the sake of praise, but because there is a belief in him that BTS should not appear ordinary, especially in front of the world. When BTS began to break into the global charts, many asked what their secret was. Official answers may sound diplomatic, but there is one truth that keeps coming up from different angles. Jungkook is a representation of silent dedication. He is proof that the greatest impact often comes from people who are not busy proving anything. International listeners who initially knew only one name slowly got to know others. From Jungkook, they know RM. From Jungkook, they find Jimin, J-Hope, Suga, and Jeon. This is an unplanned but very real domino effect. Jungkook became a door, but he never stood on that threshold alone. He always pulls BTS with him. Over time, the world began to understand that BTS is not just a trend. They are stories of hard work, solidarity, and sincerity. And in the midst of that story, Jungkook remains consistent in being himself. No more, no less. It does not seek to be a global symbol, but that is precisely what makes it a symbol. Now, when BTS's name has been etched in the history of world music, this fact is increasingly clear. Great success is not always built by the loudest voice or the most striking step. Sometimes, it is built by someone who chooses to work in silence, maintain quality, and prioritize meaning over the spotlight. Jungkook never said that the world would know BTS because of him. But history records that there was one figure who from the beginning chose the path of silence, and it was from that path that the world finally found BTS. A surprising fact that may have never been planned, but which now cannot be denied.